going. That up. So it does its little progress bar. All right. That claims it's working to some degree. All right. So Team 37 wants to get cameras going. And how are we doing this?
All right, so this first one is 4-player. So it'll be all 4 of us playing.
Right.
There can be multiple rooms of 4-player. I think maximum number of 20 players. So it's like 5 room, I guess. Yeah.
All right. So what should we're going to share one screen, multiple screens. What's the, how do we want to get this going here at the moment?
So we can't share multiple screens at the same time. But one of us should share. Do you want me to, or should you?
I can do it.
Okay.
That's what I wasn't sure if there's a difference between like when we're running, if there's one that wants to be shared over the others and things like that. It sounds like they're all equal.
That's right.
All right. And I'm looking at interim build, like sort of like double checking. Yep, that looks right. And I can just run it.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And get which one? Okie doke. Should I name a room? Yes, no?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna create a room.
Yeah.
All right, looks like everyone's ready. And then I say start game.
Yes.
All right, let's do this. All right. I'm using WASD to move around. Is that right? That's right.
Yes.
Yep.
And I can use spacebar to jump. I can bounce on things. That's really high. Is there stuff that we should be doing?
Not really. Now we only have the scene in your That's it. That's why we
All right.
have that.
I'm gonna swap out of this. So mainly getting the networking going, getting the sense that we can make rooms, we can get people in and stuff like that, right?
Yes. We also have we also have an interaction map.
Yep, I can pull that up.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll share this. All right, so this is your interaction map. You want to talk through this?
Yes. So This is a forecast game. So this world is built in as for the Black Friday shopping mall. Those forecasts would just enter each door of the department store of the on the Black Friday. So their goal is to they can move around in the store and pick up the items on sale. So they will see the cashier in the corner, and they can try to catch out as many items as they can before the store close. We have the timer, maybe probably like 5 minutes. And however, they'll only be able to carry one item at a time. And each item that can be used as a weapon as well. So they can use the item to attack and slow other guests down or make them drop their items. So the guests can steal other items from other people. And the end, when the time up, the game was over, and the guest who has the saving the most will be winning.
All right. No, it makes now like what you showed, like the demo and this connect in a way that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And I will admit, like, just the premise of this is nice and simple. I like how you picked a fantasy that not a super common one, like attacking people during a Black Friday sale, but a nice clear one. Like, I get, like, it captures a lot of really nice things, right? Like, it captures the idea that the goal is to get good deals, basically. You know, you have a scoring system that matches the fantasy. It sets up natural sort of competition. Like, there is this, within the idea of Black Friday, there's this idea of, you know, fighting for the best deals. And especially the picture down here of smashing someone over the head with, what is that? Is that like a flat screen TV, or it's a printer?
Yeah, it's like a TV. It's a TV.
No, it's sort of like, I like how this sort of like is just a little bit of pushing on what we know, and you're sort of like it twists it just a little bit and becomes this violent competition. But I think it's like the simplicity is really great, and like just the natural constraints that come out of this, like, you can only carry one thing at a time. You have to take it to this area to get checked out. So I think it flows really well, which means that a lot of this should be pretty clear. And because, like, this, if I had to guess, you kind of want this to be a little chaotic. Like, you want this to feel like people are kind of going crazy, and there's like stuff sort of emerges from the chaos. And clarity is going to be really, really important, right? Like, it's going to be necessary for all the guests to sort of get it. So I think the basic fantasy here is in a place where people will be able to get it pretty quickly. And even if they like don't get that it's Black Friday, the idea of a sort of a violent sale, I think will connect with a lot of people. And the humor here, it seems like, you know, there's an emergent piece of this, like using ridiculous things to do ridiculous things. And so that all feels like it's going to connect really well. I guess I'm kind of curious here, when you think about this being part in the festival, how do you want to run it? Like, I mean, how many guests in a room, for example, and things like that?
So 4 guests in a room, and you can create as many rooms as you want, and people can just join. But I think with the free version, it only supports like 20 guests maximum, which means 5 rooms of 4 guests.
I mean, so it sounds like if you're running up against the limitations of free, we can change that.
Oh. Like,
so I guess it sounds like we should get the paid version.
that sounds good. And we can
okay. Let's try to make that happen. I guess so. From a perspective of like, what would you like this to be? Like, if you guys want to push this, and if getting the paid version will enable you to do more what you want, like, how far do you want to take this?
we can even have a world ranking system. Like, I don't know, like
Mhm.
people can log in and have their names, and when they finish the game, they can have some sort of scoring system. Yeah, so people in the whole lobby can sort of see how people are doing, and even I guess join other rooms and see what other people are doing. But it's kind of out of scope. I don't know if we are able to get everything done in 2 weeks, but yeah.
Yeah, and so I think think scope, watch your scope. And one thing to consider is, so I mean, it was, like I said, the question of watching this and how to present it. Do you have an idea of how you want to get spectators into this and like have that be something that people can experience while not actually playing?
Yeah. So we think about like doing the monitor mode for the spectators. So the people, if they don't want to play the game, or they're the first time come into our room, they can still trying to watch how other people play. Yes, but now because we're also thinking about like what if we can make like more room, so that the more players to play it at the same time. So we are trying to figure it out how to work between them.
Well, so what I would encourage you guys to do, and this sort of gets to the idea of the guest experience and like mapping that out. Like the idea of, I think you brought up a good point, which is watching for the first time and then deciding to play, right? And I think one thing to consider is, using the space. So is the Zoom space, are you effectively just always showing a match, right? Like if a guest comes in and they go to the Zoom call, it's really a place to come in. It's effectively a stream that they can just sort of like jump into and watch and see whatever whichever match you are currently highlighting. And it's not about jumping in at the beginning and seeing the match from being there from the start and being part of the whole sequence. It's just a chance to sort of see in a relatively smooth way. Like you come into the virtual space, you go to the Zoom call, you see what's going on, you get excited about it, people are chatting, you can sit there and watch if you want. And then I, as a guest, decide I want to play. And so I think that's the next question: is how do you make it clear, and how do you facilitate a guest transitioning from a spectator to a player? And what does that look like? And one thing you may want to consider is how do you set up matches, right? If this is exclusively, if you're aiming just for 4 guests, then getting 4 guests into a match, and sometimes the right 4 guests might be important. So if I come in, let's say I'm with a friend, like I want to make sure I play with that friend. Is the creation of a room entirely on a guest? Like, is it on me to facilitate the matchmaking, to facilitate like the setup of all that? Or is it one of you? Like, are you guys providing like matchmaking and stuff like that? And so I think that would be if you're going to like think about the execution of this, how you get guests into this and get them sort of like set up to have a good match would be a thing I would look hard at. And then I would look at how, like, what is that entrance and what is the exit? So what does it mean to be done? And is it, do we go back out to the main virtual world? You guys mentioned a little bit, like there's possibly your own internal lobby and things like that. And so I think making decisions about how to sort of get guests through this is going to be part of what you want to consider, and it might be the good thing to start building your decisions around right now. Talk to me a little bit more about the actual combat, the space that you're working in. Like I think there's a lot of this inspires a lot of natural stuff. Do you have an idea of what you want to build for next week? Sort of what your target is for interim and like what the interactions are going to be?
We have 4, 5 different departments of that store. So there's a clothing, toiletries, groceries, or not groceries, like footwear and tech. And we've thought of a few different interactions for each object. So like if you get sneakers, you can run really fast. If you like have a TV, that's like you can bash people over the head, and toilet paper can tie people up. The models we're currently working with, we're trying to implement a ragdoll system next week. So we're going to transition out of the ones that were in this build and just have regular keyframed animations, because linking rigid bodies to my rigs ran into a problem. So
now, one of the things it sounds like you're going for is, unique items, which means unique behaviors and unique moments. Like, is the plan to like have like a custom attack animation for every object, or is it like every object gets held and like animated the same way, and like you tweak it with numbers?
the way we grab things is the same, but yeah, there are unique animations for each. But there's only like 4 main things that you can get. It's not that you can grab everything in the store.
Okay, I would watch out for that, because the fantasy sets up I can grab anything, and so if you're restricting the guest to be like these are like the 4 weapons, choose your weapons, you might need to build it in a way that makes that really clear. And I think that's going to be the other thing to watch for. And this is what I aim for interim is like, in some sense, what are the constraints for the guests? And then how do those constraints develop into strategies? Because the thing you're having sort of 4-player free for all. This is gonna be free for all, not like team like 2v2 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that in some sense that will start to balance itself. Like if someone does this, then like someone else can do that, and they can sort of like fight to see who does it better. But you're gonna need to watch out for. If you want 4, at least 4 different weapons, you want those to have like kind of equal choice. You want them to be balanced in some way. And I think that's the thing to watch for next week is how do you start to get a sense of the interactions you want to build working to create the experience you want, and it not there. And like, let's, for instance, you build running shoes, and it turns out that they're far and away the best thing to do. Just like grab shoes and keep running and keep running, and getting into sort of exploits that break the system. And so I think that's what I would watch for next week is you've got the gameplay loop in, and you're able to experience on a basic level what are like the choices you want the guests to have, and you're sort of testing. Your goal is to test 4 guests fighting each other and like doing exactly what this interaction map says you want me to do. And I would sort of be building for like in terms of animation, in terms of like the visuals, in terms of like making this express like the humor and the moments. Like I would let that be on its own pace, because I think the tuning of the balance of the interactions is your next big worry. It's like getting that to feel good and getting legitimately 4 guests interacting in different ways and interesting ways. You want to know that sooner rather than later, and so you can react to, oh yeah, like it turns out that we really want more. Like having 4 felt like a lot, but when we played it, we just wanted to like rapidly switch to things. Or you're like, yeah, we want to like really focus on making 4 clear choices and balancing those really well, and things like that. But I think, like I said before, exciting, like clear fantasy, and I think it feels like it could be a really good fit for festival. I can imagine like how you'll build out the room and sort of like sell that. And I think especially if you can talk to Cloudworks, the idea of how to like the idea of high score, or the idea of like, just sort of like expressing a little bit passively to guests the activity that's happening, that this this person has the high score of the hour and things like that, but just like a way to make it connect my work and my play in a room and my success to something a little, it's not permanent, but it sticks around and it becomes a mark to beat, is a good thing to think about as well. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Exciting stuff.
Thank you.
All right, that was team 37. So moving one up to team 38. You guys want to get your videos up? And I'm gonna check over here. Anything about running this that we should know? Should we jump straight into running it?
You can just start running it, because although it's like a 4-player game, we still haven't like complete the network feature, so it's still like a 1-player version now. So you can just start playing it. Yeah.
All right, I will go ahead and do that on my side. It's the haunted house executable.
Yeah.
All right. Wait a sec. Here we go. Appear to be a capsule. I can move around with WASD. Ooh.
Yeah. So so basically, like for now, you're just playing as one of the player, but you can press Q or E to switch the player. So there are two types of player. Like one is like this cube, who is the ghost, and the other one the capsule is the normal player. Like we actually have a storyboard. I'm not sure whether you want to hear it. Like actually, there's like already game feature down, but I think it's very unclear, like because we don't have like the animation or any status indicator. But the way is like so basically the gas is like the normal player is RJ having a party on the roof, but like the ghost really want to sleep, so the ghost just turn off all the light and the electricity because he wants to sleep. And so the human player needs to fix all the lighting, but the ghost doesn't want the party to go on, so he will just try to scare to jump out of like the other player's face and scare them out, like just to scare them. So basically, you can, if you play as ghost and you get close enough to one of the player and you click left mouse, you can just scare them.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're scared. But at the same time, like the ghost is afraid of light. So if you are play as a normal player, like if you switch to any of the normal player, you just scared two of them. If you click left mouse, you can flash your flashlight, and the ghost will be like stunned for a while, and
Nice.
like just for a while, because like he is the ghost. But you can also revive your teammate if you get close enough to your like a stunned teammate, and click right click your mouse and wait for a while, like 5 seconds around.
Should I hold or just click?
Just click once.
There we go.
Yeah, and he's back. And in order for the human player to win, you guys need to fix all the light source on the corner. If you can see those red boxes, and you get close enough and press space button. But you need 2 players to work on the same light source at the same time to fix it.
Gotcha.
It. Yeah. And
so in theory, if I was able to
Yeah, so basically it's like there you need 2 players to work on the light, while the other one to protect them from the ghost, something like that. But like you need to switch the job, because like the flashlight, you cannot use it continuously. So you can only use it like once per 10 seconds, but the ghost will only be stunned like for 5 seconds. So you need to take turn to deal with the ghost while fix the light at the same time. So it's like kind of like a strategy, like fun game. Yeah, that's basically all we have. We also have a storyboard. Yeah.
Sure, we'll switch over to that.
Mhm.
And here we go. This is the storyboard.
Yeah. So basically, it's the same thing. So the normal player, like the human player, wants to have a party on the roof, but the ghost is like really annoyed, because like he just wants to sleep. So he's trying to catch like everyone. Like he just turn off the light and try to catch everyone, so he can have a nice sleep. But the human player wants to continue the party. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the asymmetry of this is really exciting. Using that different roles. And are you thinking all 4 will be festival guests, right? So like
Yeah, all 4 will be guests. Yeah, will be guests.
So one person gets to be the ghost, and 3 people get to be the non-ghosts, the toads.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we're using like we're having like toads, like having a party on the roof. Yes.
All right. Is there? I'm gonna ask toads. Is that from anything, or is it?
I guess no, but I don't know. Like yeah, we were just deciding to use toads because it looks cool, maybe.
So we sort of get up there, and it seems like, I mean, like as you described them, the interactions all make sense. The one thing to watch for is there's a decent amount of complexity here. Now, it's not necessarily bad complexity, but there's a lot of stuff that you need the guests to understand so they can strategize. And I think that's going to be like the big thing here is this is effectively a strategy game, right? Like this is about, as a ghost, I need to have a good strategy. And but especially as the 3 toads, we need to strategize. We need to sort of like think about how we want to do this. We want to cooperate. And getting guests to rapidly level up in sort of their understanding of the space to the point where they can strategize is a bit of a challenge, because it means they need to not only understand the high level goal, in this case, which is like getting all the lights on, but they need to know like the balance of this world. So they need to have a sense of, what does it mean to be, like, how dangerous is the ghost? What can the ghost do to me? And how do I work with that? Like, is it a long cooldown on like does a ghost have a cooldown on like when it can scare? Can I rely upon that? How long does it take me to revive a teammate? And sometimes like, how fast am I compared to how fast the ghost is? All those little things, which means that some of this work is just making that stuff visible, like the feedback and the clarity of like, this is cooling down, this is recharging. So you're gonna want in places to have like really clear, like, oh, you've got like, you gotta wait this much longer. It's like, it's going this fast. And so meters and like ways to express that will be helpful. And I think part of this is just then also the tuning of getting 4 people together and getting this world in a place where you can really sort of try out like basically who wins and how easily do they win. And I think that's the other thing to watch for is if the people know what they're doing and are ready to go and like are sort of like executing strategy, is there a dominant strategy? Like, is it easy for the ghost to win? Is it easy for the other guests to win? And how do you sort of like make sure that each match is as exciting as it can be? And so I think that's sort of what I would look at and watch for in this is like, because it's very strategy oriented, you guys are going to need to like basically tune strategy. and work on like how to get that to work, which is I mean, like the only way to do it is to iterate.
Yes.
And so I think, and actually, so where you're at right now is pretty good. You have all the pieces. Like the last little piece is really just getting the networking in, and now like networking isn't necessarily a tiny piece, but it's good to see that you sort of got the basic structure, the layout. You've got the interactions in place, and now it's like getting it, it's playing it and feeling it and seeing how that goes. Watch out for tuning, man. Tuning is like easy to think about. Like it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, okay, we just need to get there's gonna be a cooldown, there's gonna be this. Tuning can swing things dramatically. You can go from an experience which is no fun at all to an experience that's a lot of fun just in tuning. So be ready to play this and be like, spend time like looking at it and being like, okay, like how do we iterate this and find ways to do that, possibly really quickly. I would encourage you guys, like as a team, to sit down and like have time to just, once you get the networking in and you get it basically playable, try it and like talk through it, like, you know, be sort of like live speaking loud of what you're thinking about, what's frustrating, and like you're pushing for strategy. Like if you're the ghost, like how do you defeat the other three players? If the other three players, like what is the right way to approach it? And sort of get that in. The other side of this is then the naive guest. And I think the other thing to appreciate is naive guests and strategy can often be really far apart. So the thing you're probably going to do as a team is you're going to discover the tuning and the balance of this, and you're going to naturally be experts, right? And so the next thing after that is to sort of like then tune for naive. And some of that is more about getting the naive guest to understand the world. So it's less, you have to retune and like rebalance things because naive guests only do certain things. It's, they need to understand this, and this before they can start to strategize. And so it's going to be clarity for the guests, which helps them get to a place where they can experience it. The nice thing, I mean, you guys are going for a relatively like simplified space. Like this is not a 10-story mansion and like you have to go through the stairs, you can take the elevator and you can like team up and you can carry some on your shoulders. And then there's like the ghost can actually possess 10 different paintings and do all these different things. You guys have a nice scoped space, which I think is going to serve you really well as you're building through this. So it means you can focus on what the guests know and understand. But the clarity I think is a thing to watch for. And then the one other thing is going to be like how to make this, so each match have a compelling interest curve. I think that's when in the tuning you'll probably want to watch for is like it's particularly what is the ending, what do the endings feel like? Because there's some which is the two ends of this are like the ghost utterly fails and it's like within 30 seconds, the three other players just like turn the lights on and the ghost is left like being like, I didn't do anything. And that kind of sucks. And then the other one is like the ghost comes through and just like stuns the three people almost instantaneously and they're frozen out. And so you're watching for the failure cases and your goal is like an interesting match for each one. But it's, yeah, I think I especially love the asymmetry. I think it's a really good idea for this. How do you want to, I guess, have you thought about how this integrates into the festival? Like, how do you want to run this? Is this going to be like a singular event that you're going to get people selected for and then run and people are going to watch and be spectators? Like, do you want to try to find a way to show multiple viewpoints so I can watch both from like the one of the three toads perspectives, but also see the ghost perspective?
Yeah. So basically, So when the player are actually playing this, they have like we're playing in Zoom, right? So basically they can all share their screen and you can switch to like any player's like perspective as you want as if you are observer. But also like if we have time, like if we have like completed like if we have completed ever like tuning and map design, like everything before, and we still have time, we're planning to make like a observer mode. You can join the game. Also, you are not playing the game. You can view the whole map from like a higher camera angle, so you don't know what is everybody's doing. Yeah.
And this is a good good note for everyone. If there's something you would do that's mainly around festival guest experience, and let's say it's in scope for a few days of work, that could be something you propose to jury and say, and for festival, we'd do this. We would create an extra view or an extra way to view stuff, and we would show that. For now, like we're doing this, that's an acceptable strategy. So I guess no for round 5, that if stuff that's like specifically designed for festival doesn't quite make it in, it's a good scope trade-off to make the experience itself better, rather than like engineering an extra layer of like presentation work just for festival. If you can get both, like that's great. But especially if you're thinking about like where to put time and effort, we will have time after jury where teams can work on stuff. And that's the kind of thing that might make sense, if you're like looking at time, to put in the time before festival, but after jury. But one of the things that particularly why it's interesting for you guys is I think it's one thing for spectators, like what is exciting for spectators? Because in some sense I guess for you guys as well, the ghost, how much of a ghost is it? Like, is the ghost always visible? Like, is there an idea that the ghost is?
Yes, there's something we haven't implemented. So the ghost is not visible until you have like a flashlight on him. So yeah, but the ghost can see everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like there is an aspect of like being sneaky, and sort of asymmetry in what I can see. I think that gets the question for spectators. Like there is perhaps a lot of drama for spectators, which is, oh, I can see everything, and like I know that that one character can't see the ghost right now, and the ghost is sneaking up. And so a perspective on like how to just think about the tuning is, how do you encourage that? Like how do you get stuff that's exciting to watch and not just to play? And I think for you, it is like the idea of the ghost like getting advantages by being sort of sneaky and like invisible. There's a team from last year's festival that you might want to look at, which was a 4-player asymmetric world, and they were dealing with like having to how to tune like a 3v1 experience in the dark, and it might make sense to talk to them about what how their experience was, and like what were their lessons learned for that. So I'll send you guys a link to them, and you can sort of check them out.
Yeah, sure, that's helpful.
Cool. No, I think it's like I said, it's going in an exciting direction, and I think for next interim, getting it playable so you can start to see the balance and strategy feels like the right move. Anything else you wanted to talk about or share?
I think we're good. Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, Dan.
Good work. All right. So that was 38. And if Team 39 wants to pull things open, get the videos going, This is, and if you want to talk to me, what's the guest configuration for 39?
The intended is for 5 to 10 guests, but 4 for now is fine.
I mean, can you guys do more than that
More than 5 to 10?
right now? I mean,
Yeah, we can have like. I mean, I could. Yeah, our world currently supports. Lewis, do we have a cap on how many people can join?
Up to 10.
I mean, I guess this is I've got a build. Annie,
Yeah.
you have a build. Steph has
I
a
think
build.
Dave is saying that we should join in to make up the numbers.
So
Oh yeah, can we do that?
If you guys want to add players, then go for it.
Sure. Okay. Have you started up the world yet?
Should we give me
I'm
a start?
in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just start up the world.
And I'll share my screen.
Yes. Yes, please. I'll give a few verbal instructions, but hopefully not too many. All right. So.
All right.
So these little pillars are resources. So you grab the resources with J, and then you build them to block the hero. So you have to build labyrinth.
All right. So J.
So those white ones are traps.
Is the mouse used at all?
No mouse.
Okay. Gotcha. Got sand.
And theoretically, you can block the hero's path entirely, but please try not to.
I have a question. Where is the hero coming from?
They're coming from the left, and they travel along the white line. The white line is the projected path.
Oh, okay. So the hero will stay on the white track.
Yes.
Oh my god, I am trapped. Someone trapped me. Why?
Having stone.
Yeah. So the
Oh,
goal
I
is,
see the hero.
yeah. So you can block off the route entirely, but try not to, because I have not. Okay. Yeah.
Are we blocked entirely back then?
Yeah. We blocked the entire thing. It's okay.
So the white line adapts and basically it's like, this is where the hero's now going to go.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wait, so the white line is gone now.
Yeah, that's because there's no longer a path from the hero to the main door.
Oh, actually, we can discard. Uh-oh.
Something happened?
Oh, I think it's a countdown because we're trying to stall the hero for 15 seconds. And we won.
It's not counting down. Okay, well I don't know why it's not counting down, but it will count down and it'll say you win.
It did on my side.
We'll look into
So-
that.
Yeah, okay, that means Annie right now is a master client. We didn't fix it yet for networking. Annie, do you have a you win pop up?
Yes. So
Okay.
I had the countdown and then I have a you win pop up.
Okay.
I guess I was the first one to join the world.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
and
Alright,
some
so
of
you
the
go-
blocks
go out
are
of this?
disappeared.
Yeah, you can exit out of this.
Mhm.
Mind if I share the storyboard so I can like zoom in?
Sure. I'm going to get you. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So we actually have two sets of storyboards. One is for kind of the overall experience, and one is for like a singular guest experience, because they're a little distinct. So I'll go over the overall experience, and this is kind of how the entire game would play. So pretty typical, you start out with the title screen, Demon Lord Construction Corporation. And so this is a screen that the host will see, and the host will basically share their screen the entire time. So Demon Lord Construction Corporation, you can see how many people are in the lobby who are currently waiting. And once you have enough people, you can start. We have a cutscene. The Demon Lord has Newcastle. Yeah, he needs to employ his minor demons in order to build defenses for the hero. And so you have the game overview is to build resources, use resources to craft walls. This is the first floor which you played. There's objectives in the top left corner, the timer in the top right corner, and then resources, and then there's a projected path. And so you would build obstacles such that the route adjusts to show where the path the hero would take. Right, so once the hero finishes, once the timer finishes, you have the valuation. In this first one, it was stall the hero for 15 seconds, so the hero would like move for 15 seconds, and if you stop for 50 seconds, you win, and if you don't, you lose. And then it's show the valuation. You win, or you failed. Oh no. Okay, so that was floor one, but we'll have like n different floors, and each floor would have like different objective, or maybe some floors would have the same objective. There'd be a variety of objectives. There'd be a timer, and then the resources would be somewhere in this map, right? And then you can see an example. People just build based on what the floor looks like, and then we might have some events that affect everyone in the world. Maybe at 2 minutes, like, oh no, it's winter, so the floor becomes really slippery, and then everybody starts slipping. Or warning, there was an accident in the Demon Lord's quarry, so now there are no more stone resources for the next minute, something like that. So yeah, so you have floor N events, and then we will have, after N floors, there'll be something called a quote-unquote final evaluation. And what this is that for the floors, floor 1 and floor N, only one hero went through the map. But for the final evaluation, you'll have like a wave of heroes go through the map, and then each floor might let like a certain number of heroes through. And so at the very end, you'll see what percentage of heroes your castle is able to block. And if you're able to block like 80% of heroes, the Demon Lord will be pleased because you did a good job building traps. You can see maybe a leaderboard for top builders. So this entire experience, we're currently thinking that like each floor would take 3 to 5 minutes. For BBW, obviously we're going to have like 5 rounds, or we're going to have fewer rounds than we would have during festival, because during festival we could have maybe fill up to 1 hour, but that obviously would not work in the BBW slot. So let's say maybe like 3 to 5 rounds for BBW, or less depending on how much time we have.
I guess with that point, talk to me about an hour. So my first reaction is like 10 guests committing to a game for an hour seems crazy.
Well, that's when we're going to get into the guest storyboards. So right. Nice segue, Dave. Thank you very much. So obviously, we don't expect guests to play for the entire time. We want to have a game where guests can drop in and drop out. And so this is so the individual guest experience is going to be very different from the overall experience. So the guest experience is much shorter. It's going to be like 5 minutes or however long they decide to play. And you'll start off in the waiting room where the Demon Lord is reviewing applications. Please hold, and they'll see your position in the queue. If you start when the world starts, you'll see the cutscene. Otherwise, you'll just see like the overview of kind of instructions. You'll have interactions, allows you to move, pick up resources, place blocks, and then go back, grab more resources. And there's obstructions to doing what you want to do, such as players block each other. You can't go through walls you placed. You're affected by traps that anyone places, and there can be world events. And then there's the floor evaluation. And one thing different here is that upon the completion of the floor, guests will receive 3 options. They can either continue to the next floor, they can re-queue, or they can quit. So say this world supports 10 people on a floor at a time. Now, naturally, there can be more people who would be waiting in line if it's festival, right? We have this queue system, and say that there's 20 people who want to play this world. If you are currently in the world, you can say like, okay, I want to play, but I don't want to take the spot away from other people, so I can re-queue. So they will just go to the back of the queue, and then once that goes through, then they can play again. And so this is the player's game loop, in which that they will play a world, and then they will decide, do I want to play more, or do I want to take a break, or do I want to just stop? So they will not be around for the entire thing.
Gotcha.
Right. And so now what happens for the final evaluation? Because we went through like floor 1 and floor N, which kind of lines up nicely. The final evaluation, guests can either join in the Zoom call, so because the host will always be screen sharing, or they can kind of view in-game. And so they will be able to watch the final evaluation and see the results of their building, just like in Zoom. So the idea behind this is that one thing that we feel the festival is currently lacking is the presence of events. So for example, if you go to maybe like conventions, conferences, oftentimes there's like this thing happening at this time, and that's kind of an impromptu for people to go do certain things. And we feel like festival doesn't really have anything like that. So what we were thinking was that we have this game loop of you build different floors, and then there's this final evaluation. So we can have every final evaluation be on the hour, such that if guests play this world, they're like, oh, okay, that's fun, I had enough, I'll quit, and they will exit the room. And then they see like, oh, it is 10:58, I should go see how my floor stands up. And so they can go to the room, and they can rejoin the Zoom call, and then they can watch the final evaluation, and they can see how well their floor stands up, and then they can see the efforts of the work. And that is how we plan this experience to go in a festival format.
Gotcha. No, and I think the idea, I mean, I think the idea of an event is pretty exciting with the, like, there's basically a reason to come back. There's I was part of this, and it's on my schedule to watch this thing happen. And so like that concept I think is really strong. And just like starting to play this, there is, in sort of the immediate, the kind of like the chaos of a bunch of little minions like just moving around and trying to do stuff. There's clearly iteration to be done, and so that we know what we're doing and it's a bit more intentional. But I think there is sort of this, it has this feeling of like a little hive of workers like just scurrying around and doing stuff that on an individual level doesn't have a whole lot of like clear purpose, but is building something bigger than my individual parts. So like being part of something bigger than myself is sort of like a feeling this evokes in already from the beginning. One thing I would push you on, like, you've got a lot of like structure to this, and my first thought is that one, like getting the guests to know what they're doing is gonna be a bit of a challenge, and so actually having this progression of levels will probably be helpful. Like a guest, and this sort of gets to the idea of strategy, because this is, we need to work together to make an effective level. is sort of like one of the high order objectives for the guests, right? Like this isn't going to be the world will take chaos and celebrate it. This feels like your hope is a somewhat structured strategic level gets built by the crowd. Is that sort of fair description of what you would like to have happen?
The guests should attempt to strategically build a floor, and of course, we will try to throw variation in there. But
yeah, and so right now, like where you don't have enough structure for the guests to build strategically, because they have to learn what strategy is in the first place, and I think this is part of the play experience is how do you train your workers, right? How do you train guests to work together to build an effective level? And I think I would use that possibly to drive the guest experience a little bit. I like the idea that you have an application concept, and so you had this idea of like a guest comes in and like they need to apply, and it made me wonder, what is the full guest journey here? Like what makes them decide to play in the first place? Like what is sort of that full, like the guest walks into your virtual space and they're like, do they immediately sign up to play? Do they play a shared experience first, or do they play a tutorial? Like, to be allowed to be a worker minion, you have to play a single player tutorial before you get access to the multiplayer aspect. Or like, do I go and watch and I see the live experience and that inspires me to come play and I want to jump in and do stuff? Do I want to jump in and do stuff that is related to strategy? Like, like I'm watching and I'm like, I know what we should do here. We should do that. We should put that in. So I'm going to jump in and be a member of that. So I think there is a question, which is like, what is your guest mindset? Like, what are your different guests and why are they doing what they're doing? Because you have this big idea of an event, and there's different motivations for why I become part of that event. And on top of those motivations, there's possibly training that's required. Because like looking at your sequence, I think your instincts are right. Like there kind of wants to be, like, to get to the point where I can do the final evaluation level, I kind of need to go through the simple one first. I need to sort of understand on some level how this game works before I can really apply, sort of test my strategy in place, possibly, or not. Like, I mean, I think that's the question for you guys is like, how do you want to shape your guests so that you get these exciting events? And I think that question of like, do you have a guest who have no idea what they're doing and they jump in and they're just part of the building of the final of that level? Do you have guests who go through a progression? You have to earn your way in. You have to, know what you're doing. Like, in some sense, how naive are your guests for this experience? Is a thing to wrestle with. And yeah, I think that's the thing I would look at. What do you guys want to have built by Interim next week?
So I think we currently have floor 1. So I think we want to build out a few floor ends, not too many. Obviously, we only have the one wall and one trap, so maybe developing a variety of there, and building the final evaluation is something that we still need to do, and how that would look different from the in-level evaluation.
So what do you guys, I mean, is this the final evaluation, this being a big event, is that what you guys are really excited about? Is that sort of the, like, if we can get that would be big success for you guys?
I think the big success is being fun and replayable for multiple levels. I think the final evaluation is more of a way to punctuate the experience. So it is a necessity, but our kind of goal is fun and chaos.
Okay. Well, and so one of the things that I would be cautious about is you have like the idea of a bunch of levels makes sense if you're building basically a single player like game that I'm going to sit down and buy and play for a long period of time. But it doesn't necessarily fit the festival in the sense of like how like those levels are designed around sort of a single perspective, like a single guest playing through them. And as you've described, you're not expecting your guests to go through that. And the storyboard about the guest experience is I think the thing you need to focus on. And I guess the question about the event was, I'm thinking if you want these to be singular punctuated moments, I would almost build that first. Like one of the things you see in game development is the tutorial comes last. So there's sort of what is the sort of the exciting guest experience, an exciting also spectator experience that you want this to be. And then there's a question of how do you then work to make sure that happens. And I think for you guys, there's a question of how do you get guests excited and get them into the space. So it's sort of like training, tutorial, like the entry level stuff. And then there's like the big show, the reason we're all here, the thing that's like, you want people excited about. And I don't know if it's clear yet what the connection is between those two, and especially like if there are levels in between. So I wouldn't necessarily jump into the idea that you need to have a progression of levels. And it might be more like, how do you sort of build sort of more directly to this idea of an event? And that, because I mean, if you're looking at a 5-minute guest experience, what you have to somehow do is take a 5-minute guest experience, multiply it across however many guests you expect to have cycle through this. And each of those is like a little guest experience that you've created, and they all need to add up to this, what you want it to be. And that doesn't map, in my mind, super well to a bunch of different levels. Unless, like, I mean, in theory, they're just all similar variations on the same thing. I guess that's the thing I'm struggling with is, what does level progression mean if you're expecting sort of a jump in, jump out 5-minute guest experience?
Different levels. So, sorry, I said different levels, but I meant more like different map designs. It basically to be add variability. So you finish. So even when spectating, you finish the level where everything's like a square, but maybe we rotate through a set of like 3 different maps, or randomize between 3 to 4 different maps. So just so that every single floor is not the same. So we're not necessarily planning like a difficulty progression between one floor to the next, but it's just for variety.
This isn't super clear to me. The evaluation is then all those levels then strung together. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I gotcha. It is like we spend this time building all these levels, and then the event is seeing them all evaluated.
Yes.
So the individual guest experience is, I build this and then I leave and it's like a cliffhanger. Like I don't actually know how it's going to work.
Right.
Okay. So I think that's going to be part of this. That's going to be an interesting challenge. Is like your world is fundamentally about delayed gratification, right? It's come in here and do this thing, and it's a collective like proposal of what might work, but you don't know, so you don't get a chance to like iterate and evaluate. until the end. And I think that, yeah. So like how do you get a guest, how do you get a group of guests into that space in such a way that they're not confused about what they should be doing? And that might be a thing you look at it, which is the idea of, I was sort of thinking about tutorial, is getting, how do you sort of train people to sort of have some sense of what strategy is? And I think if you map out what you want the guests to know at any given moment, I think you want all the guests, when they go into a level that's going to be fed into the final evaluation, you want them all to understand the basics of the experience, right? Like you want them to understand what the flow of this will be, what the how the hero will work. You want them to have enough information that they can collectively strategize. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges, is getting guests to that space so they can then build it, because your world isn't necessarily, doesn't give them continuous feedback. It's not like I can try this thing and see how it works. It's I can put this down and then in 30 minutes I'll find out if that was a good choice. And so that idea of putting a plan down, executing a strategy collectively, and then coming back and seeing it tested is going to requires the guests have build up their own anticipation. And I think that's going to be one of your challenges, is how do you build in anticipation for how this will work? And what will that look like? And I think the other thing will be, how will you get variety? Like how will it be meaningful then at the end to watch these levels all strung together? And I think I would use the idea of interest curve and think about, like, what is that final, the passive watching the evaluation, what does that interest curve look like? And like, what are the guests getting out of it? Because if it's on an individual level, you can play, like, and this is sort of what tower defense games do. It's fundamentally success and failure. It's sort of a binary thing. And when they get really interesting, like, you are right down to the wire of, like, I'm just barely survived, but it's fundamentally you survive versus you didn't survive. If you string these together, an early level failing will actually fail other levels prematurely, and that might be a thing to be careful with too. But yeah, I think like I said, the pieces, especially the feel of this, if you can get, I think for me, the idea of a bunch of guests swarming together and making something, and then watching that somehow feel like multiplied across like time and guests into something bigger is especially exciting. And getting that feel of I was part of something is especially exciting. And the idea of coming back and seeing how we did is unique. I think, how do you capture that and make that come true is, I think, your big challenge.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is gonna be fascinating. You guys are pushing into a space that, like, yeah, build and see and be ready to iterate. And I think and then so what you build for interim next week, that's what I would try to figure out. And it might be, one of the things you might look at is building levels. So you have an interesting 2-phase world, right? you have the guests come together to build something, and then what gets built gets tested. One thing you could do, it depends on how you're building stuff, but you could do something where you guys intentionally build like what you think finished levels should look like. Like you build out like that final evaluation scene, not necessarily through the gameplay interface, but you just sort of build those levels, right? And then have the hero go through them. You should be able to design an exciting final evaluation moment. And if you have a sense of what that is, then in theory, you can design the guest experience to hopefully get them to build levels like that. And that's sort of might be a good perspective on how to think about this is, okay, what is this event moment? What do we want that to sort of feel like? It's, 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. We want them to feel like this, and, run it and see how it feels to watch that. Like, does it just feel like the same 4 levels run through in a row? Is there variety? Is there an interest curve? If you were part of building those, what would you be watching for? Are there moments that you can sort of identify that your guests would sort of be anticipating, and stuff like that. And I think use that then to drive the individual guest experience. And I think that might be a good strategy to like get that event. Because like I said, I like the idea of the event, like people coming and that being a thing to come back for and cheer for. And like some of the stuff that you can do is like, what would people type in the chat, right? As this is happening. What are those individual celebrations? And I think that maps to like the interest curve. There's like an interest curve for the whole thing. There's an interest curve for each level possibly. And then within the level, there's those moments and stuff like that. So yeah, push on it. Make something awesome.
Thank you.
All right, good work, guys. All right. So that was the first 3. Exciting work. I think we're about on schedule for the next group of teams. So with that, I think we can push into the next team, which according to my counting is team 40. Is that right? All right, team 40 wants to get video up. I'm gonna open things up. Anything you guys want us to do in terms of running and presenting this?
Yeah, so our current build has some bugs. So for you to understand how it works, it will be better if you are the host of the game, like of the room, like you create the room.
So wait, what do you want me to do exactly?
So this is a full-time game. So if you're going to that game, and we want you to create the room. And
okay.
Like sounds like this is a two-player game. So another.
How do I do? Should we just me to run it first? Is that the way I do it, or do I start it and I click buttons?
Yeah, you click the create room buttons.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm looking at interim build version 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
All right, I'll go ahead and share.
Also, the game requires 2 players.
I'll be the second one.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and it's gonna be controlled using mouse.
I'm gonna create room. All right, I am ready.
So Dave, you're gonna control the game with your mouse only, and Stephanie is gonna control the game with the space bar and the mouse.
Okay. All right. Steph, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Whoa. Oh, yeah, I've got a hand. I am not controlling the cleaver. Steph, are you controlling the cleaver?
Yep.
I do. part of me wants to do this, and part of me doesn't.
Oh wait, so Dave, you're gonna like press the spacebar to hold the food, and this mouse is gonna like move left or right to move the food around. Stephanie is gonna move the mouse forward or backward to cut it.
Oh man.
Oh.
This
Yeah,
makes
but
me
yeah, well,
nervous,
look, we're
but
on
in the
staff
right way.
screen.
Yeah, Steph, there's some bug on your side. So
Yeah, okay. I was like, I'm making more carrots.
All right. I'm kind of curious.
Should we do it?
Kind of have to do it.
it's not implemented yet.
Oh.
Yeah, that's all we have now.
Awesome. So this is basically, is this like cooperative cooking?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Nice. Is there anything else that you want to share? Or you just want to talk about what you got?
I think we're just gonna talk about it.
Okay, man. Like my immediate reaction, like super clear. There's a giant cleaver, and a hand and a carrot, and I will admit, like I'm the person in the house who cooks, so I'm sort of sensitive to chopping fingers, and it is like I had a visceral reaction to just like seeing the knife in the air and the fingers, and also like that is not a good way to hold a carrot. Like, so you're basically just offering your carrot, your fingers to the knife. Part of me is like, get those back. But all that stuff's good. Like the fact that you sort of have the setup that I think is having an immediate reaction. What I was talking about where you want to go with this. Like what do you want this to sort of become?
It's actually the goal of for each carrot or any kind of food is going to have the player is going to cut it into the certain pieces that's required, like 10 or 20 pieces in a certain amount of time.
Okay.
And also, if we are able to achieve it, we're gonna make the food is kind of slippery, which means if it's not held by the left hand, the right hand cleaver just cut it through. You are gonna make the food kind of rolling to the edge of the cupboard. And once the clock is over, the left hand is cut it into certain times, or the food is slipped down to the floor, then the round is over. And they're just like keep challenging, run by run, and there's gonna be like a billboard.
Okay, so the experience. I'm thinking about like spectators and players. It's this is designed to be a 2-player experience.
Yes.
And so the spectators are watching 2 people like try to beat the clock and sort of like rushing to make stuff happen.
Yes.
What is so you mentioned that there's a timer. Is there like an overall success? Like, are we making like soup? We building to, is there a broader context beyond just like a single cutting board?
Yes, that's gonna be okay. Gonna be explained in 2 ways. We have by preparing. One is we're gonna pack them into like different chapters. Each chapter is kind of named after a certain recipe, and all the foods contained there is gonna be the food that is needed for that recipe. Another way is we're gonna use cutscenes to kind of explain that maybe the players is just like a rookie chef in the kitchen, and he's just kind of asking to do this hard labor in a very effective way and kind of just endless. So they're rushing through their billboard.
Okay, and I guess when you think about the moments of this, especially from a sort of like a spectator perspective, what are you picturing? Is this, I guess maybe some examples, like my first reaction was the drama of me getting cut. Like, the hand and the knife is very prominent. And my immediate reaction was, this is a world about trying not to cut myself or get cut, and playing that up. But it could also be about precision and like cooking good food. And I sort of wonder, like, when you think about like the tone and those, especially those moments where you like the audience would possibly react, what are you thinking about for that?
So what we're thinking is for the knife, if you're moving your mouse upward and then backward, you can't really keep it at straight line. So it's very possible for your knife to like drift to the left or right, and that will make that will make it easy to cut your head. So we want to make it like a chaos game. Like you have a timer so that give you a sense of tension that you want to do it quick. You also have a score so that you want to cut your foods as thin as possible or like as uniform as possible. So with this kind of tension, you want to cut it quick. And then if you hold the food like not really close to the knife, the food will be very slippery. You want to hold your hand like as close to the knife as possible. Yeah, so that's kind of like.
Well, and so I guess with that, like the question I would have is like how far, like the idea of chaos, I think is where I would push this as well. And I guess it's like, how far do you want to do that? Like, do you want to get to the point where you like that you're cutting off fingers, or am I just like nicking the hand? Like, how much, like, are you guys picturing blood? Like, I guess, is blood going to show up in this world?
We're for now we're thinking about adding tons of bandits to the finger.
When I will admit, part of me wants you to like get to the point where I'm down to just a thumb and I'm like struggling to hold the carrot. Like it goes like crazy and kind of gruesome. Part of me is also like that could be a little too much. And I guess what I'm picturing then is like, what does the end look like? There's almost like an end moment where I've completed the dish, and I feel like that wants to capture the journey we just went on, and the idea of chaos. Generally, in my mind, what the ending represents is you can sort of see the chaos that went into that end moment, right? And it's almost like a punchline to the overall experience. And I think that would be a thing I would wonder about is like, for an example of a punchline would be, oh, look, you made the soup. And then like slowly a finger bubbles up out of the soup. And it's like, oh yeah, now I remember, we cut our fingers off. And so that's a little bit of a direction to possibly think about and push in. That might be, like I said, that would be basically a world about cutting your fingers off in some sense. Like that would be almost like the expected element of chaos. And that might be a way to approach this is, what this world is right now about the threat of like cutting yourself. And I think to that end, you need to establish the stakes of like, what does that mean for the world? When you cut yourself, what does that mean? Is it just like, can I just keep cutting myself? And it's at the end of the day, that actually doesn't matter. Or are there consequences? Like for instance, like gruesome consequences would be, if I have no more fingers, I can't hold food very well. And it becomes increasingly more chaotic because it's become hard like that. If I get a Band-Aid, like what does that mean? Is it just an aesthetic consequence? Like now my hand has that stuff. And so right now you have this implied threat. And I think cooking kind of always has that. And there's a reality to that. But like I think for you guys, you need to think about what does that mean for my goal? What does it mean to do this cleanly and without ever cutting myself? What does it mean if I cut myself? Does it just slow me down? I'll admit, like one of the things, my sort of like escapist TV viewing is watching Chopped. And like if you watch a lot of Chopped, you basically you learn to watch for like the blue bandages, the blue tape and stuff like that. It's like, oh, someone cut themselves. And sometimes it's like a major moment, and sometimes it's not. It's also reality, so no one's cutting their finger off. There's no like cartoonish aspect to it. But that's a competition which is about speed, but executing things really well. Like it's chef quality, like it's about being really good at what you're doing. And the fantasy is being a really, you know, skilled chef. And I think that would be the question I have for you guys as well, is in some sense, the chaos here, the fact that it's cooperative means that we can't be that great. Like we're going to be negotiating and cooperating, and so it feels like you're setting us up for exciting moments of near misses and possibly hits. And so what that means for the world would be, I think, will be important, because you want that there to be, you want the world to sort of reinforce that stuff, and so like hit those emotional moments. Are you guys, when you think about this experience stretched out, you sort of mentioned like possibly rounds and stuff like that. What are the different interactions? Are you going to is it going to be mostly like chopping and just chopping different ways? Or are you thinking about different types of like working together to cooperate and cook?
By now, we were thinking about cutting different foods, which gonna bring different kind of difficulties. Like maybe some food's gonna be super slippery, some gonna be super runny and like a ball and slip away. Some might be too thick, so it requires more action on the right hand, something like that. And maybe like smaller cut bots, like that.
Okay. And I think for each one of those, I would look at it both through the guests who are playing and the guests who are watching, and understanding like what does it mean for something to slip away, and like is it and you can also, like, I imagine like if you get something that's like slipping away, it bounces around and like the person with a knife just trying to hit it on the fly, like, oh look, I'm like it's rolling, or trying to catch it. And I think thinking about like what those moments are and why they're sort of exciting, and then how can you connect that back to in sort of like the conclusion. Like there's a natural conclusion to cooking, which is a finished dish. How can you look at that and be like I said, connect it to what happened? I'm trying to think of like my daughter like plays some chopping games on a tablet, and like having the cuts reflect what I did, and having them be like big and chunky, or like, you know, it's a really sort of clumsy looking dish, but it's sort of celebrated, could just be a way you make that real, is that like the cuts are real, and things like that, as opposed to just a pre-made version of the dish. And so as much as you can, connecting what the guest did to the results, and then where you can do it, making that sort of unique. I think that'd be what I'd wonder is like, can you think of foods where there's different ways to execute on it, and you know, within your descriptions of it being slippery, or it, you know, struggling with it, like, can you have a thing where, like, for instance, your job is to make like nice, neat little cubes, right? So like the execution of the cutting is specific, and it's important that it looks that way because it needs to be small and it needs to get sprinkled on top. And when I execute it, I end up just making like 4 giant lumps, and I couldn't do any better than that. So when I see the dish, instead of seeing a nice like gentle sprinkle of it, I see this like big clunky lump on top. And so like the contrast between like what is expected and what I did might be a way you make it feel unique. And you can do things where, you know, you have a target dish, and the end is a side-by-side of what I was expected to do and what I really did. And that could emphasize the fact that I went through a very chaotic, cooperative, like cooking process, and I did my best. And I think that would be one thing I would like want to get a feel for, is like how what I just went through with this other person is uniquely my own experience, and it reflects the difficulty, but also the fun and the chaos of it. When you think about showing this and sharing it, right now the screen is very shared, right? Like, Steph, your view was similar to mine.
Yes.
Yeah, my view was basically the same as yours, but I moved the like knife. So we saw the same thing, just controlled different parts.
Okay, I mean that I think that's going to work really well then for guests and spectators, because it means that the information to understand this can be captured in a single screen, which feels really good. So, yeah, I think it's mainly about getting that sequence now of like what does it mean to go through these moments and get to a finished thing, and how do you get that interest curve, and I think it's the stakes of like what does the hand mean and what does it mean to cut myself, and how do you tune that, and how do you sort of know what it means within the world, and then the stakes of preparing the food and what it means to sort of have a finished piece, and as much as you can, I think, make that visual and make that sort of reflect the process, and that, I mean, just the experience of cooperative carrot cutting was already exciting, and even though like the hand doesn't react, like it's there, and like all that stuff, like there's just an intuition within that fantasy that's already working. So I think if you can get that build to a complete journey by next interim, you'll be in a great place then to like work on tuning it and sort of think about, okay, how do you really like emphasize the parts you want to emphasize? How do you get clarity for these parts and things like that as well?
Thank you.
Cool. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that was team 40. So team 41 is next. If you guys want to flip on video, anything about the world and running it that we should get ready for?
Not
run
that
it?
I know of. It is a 4-player game though.
Which
Oh, it should be in 4-person test.
4-person test?
Yeah.
All right. Any specific order in running this? Should I just go ahead and load it up?
Yeah.
All right. Annie, Steph, you joining? Karen, you joining?
Yeah, give me a minute.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead, share screen. Go ahead and start. Numbers go up. Three.
Additionally, after you guys play through it, we have a design doc that kind of like details in there like what else, like how the interactions are structured, that we can talk about, like how we want to set this gameplay up and get some feedback on that, and like our roadmap, and that's in there as well.
All right. Whoa. All right, so I can use the mouse to sort of change my view a little bit. There appeared to be things on fire. I'm going to make a guess based on the title of this world that those are little chicks.
Yes.
And I think if I click the mouse, that appears to put out a big sphere. I'm going to guess that that's I'm throwing water on them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I feel like I want to put all the fires out. I think I got that one. All right. Did I get you? Hard to tell. Come on. Where do the fires keep coming from?
Yeah. So there's no end state right now. But the chicks can light each other on fire. If one of them is on fire and they run into another one, then they will light on fire again.
What? Wait. So what are
I think we
the
lost.
Annie, Steph, Karen? What are you guys doing?
I'm just running around and trying to like fire up each other.
Are you
on fire.
farmers or the little chicks?
We're the
Little
chicks.
chick.
Little chicks.
So there are like 3 little chicks, are the 3 of us. So like we are sharing fires.
All right, so it's one guest is the farmer putting the chicks out, and the other guests are the chicks setting
Oh
themselves.
no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So that's about all we have.
Yeah, for the rest of it, we may want to talk through the design document and just like, because this is a very minimalist version of what we have.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, Dave's going up into the sky.
Is there a...
When you leave the farmer, he either descends into the earth or flies away. And he has no control. Slowly, which makes it even more dramatic.
Do you guys want to share the design doc?
Yeah, sure.
You guys can pull it up.
Let me just download it really fast. Okay. Yeah, so we are hot chicks, and the goal of each player is the hot chicks want to burn the house down, and they don't mind being on fire. They like being on fire, and the farmer wants to be the hottest thing there, and he puts out the fires. So you start as an average chick for the most part, meaning that you run around and your goal is to try to catch on fire using already hot chicks. And you avoid water because if you become wet, you cannot light for a cooldown timer until you run around or dry off. And so when you're in the hot chick state, you can burn the house down. So we're gonna have patches of hay that you can amass like the chicks at. And basically like the more chicks that are at a given patch of hay, the faster the burn happens. So in theory, one chick could burn the whole place down, but it would take quite a bit. So your goal is really to spread the fire, to find not hot chicks, make them catch on fire. And then once they ignite, which will be a little bit of a longer process than you just saw, in mass, once we have a lot of players in this game, because we're thinking, you know, double digits for sure, we will, you can go and put fires out. And then obviously you want to avoid water, because if you turn to a wet chick, it puts you into this state where you have to dry yourself off before you could ever get lit again. And if you run into a hot chick when you're in a wet state, it will turn you both into average chicks when you bump. And so the farmer wants to just put them out, and he has like a bucket and water that he uses to kind of like douse the chicks. And the barn doesn't want to get burned down, and you want to conserve your water and use it wisely when chicks are aggregated, because it only has a certain area that you saw as the sphere. And you want to light the hay, and that's the gist of the interactions.
Is the farmer a average guest, or is the farmer not an average guest? Like, is the farmer one of you guys?
The farmer, we are entertaining still the idea that the farmer may be a virtual reality person, and we may stream the person in VR doing these things as like part of the video in the upper right-hand corner. as they try to put out the chicks, because as we sort of talked about, so David and myself both have VR sets, and Showen is in Pittsburgh, and we could all like kind of take turns doing a like shift as the farmer. But we think it'll be more fun to watch someone in VR do this. However, we have also talked about, and I'm curious what your opinion on this is, having the guests have a leaderboard basically of the most time they spent as a hot chick. Like if they were on fire for a certain amount of time, the highest ranking chick graduates to the farmer. And if they want to, and they can either accept or decline that, and it kind of moves in as like a party thing.
Okay. No, and part of the reason why I asked is you guys have sort of competing interest curves almost. Like the balance, like what is the balance of this? And like for the guests controlling the chicks, it feels like you want this element of like, kind of chaos. Like the goal is like a relatively single-minded goal, which is set things on fire. And the world sort of seems to want to like embrace that and be like, there's more things set on fire, you can keep it going, and escalation of that. I guess that would be the thing I would wonder about is does this world escalate? And the farmer says, no, do not escalate. Keep it in some sort of equilibrium. And we're going to like, my goal is to like defeat you. And the chicks are like, but it's not fun to just constantly be put out. We want like things to get, bigger and catch more things on fire. And so that tension would be something to look at. And particularly when we're looking at worlds that are in competition, like what is that balance? And I think that's a question for you guys is like, what do you guys want to build? Like, where do you guys want this to go? Do you want this? And I think when you close your eyes and you picture this world and you picture like sort of a snapshot in a moment, is this a room with a bunch of little chicks that are on fire running around? Or is this a room that's like engulfed in flames and getting worse?
Probably more of the latter.
And then like there's another question, like you putting the farmer in that place, what are they doing? And is there like, how do you sort of move from nothing's on fire to everything's on fire? And what is the farmer's role in that? Because if it's the case that it's tuned so the farmer can be successful, then you may not get to the state where the whole barn's on fire and it's like this absolute chaos of chicks running around gleefully like setting more things on fire. And that might just be a thing to look at is like what is an ideal match, right? Like an ideal sequence of like, we have this many guests, what do they do? And like, what are those exciting moments? And then what is the ending of that? And it could be the case that there is an exciting end where the farmer successfully keeps things under control and the place doesn't burn down. And there's also an exciting one where the chicks take over and things burn down. But as a team, you guys should sort of like know those endpoints and push them and sort of make those what you want them to be. So as a chick, what can I do? I guess, how do I catch on fire in the first place?
So yeah, you basically like, you need a hot chick already on fire to be adjacent to you for a certain amount of times. Like we're calling it X seconds right now because we don't have a balanced time yet. But yeah, like that's your goal.
So some start on fire from the beginning.
And as it stands right now, is the idea that if the farmer is efficient, the farmer can put out all the chicks and then like it's effectively game over?
Yeah. Or he could put out most of it. Like in theory, let's say like there were 3 chicks that were just put water on, and there was one chick that was still on fire. If a wet chick at that point that was just doused bumps into the hot chick, the last one, they'll both go out, and that would also lose the game.
Okay. Yeah. I think my one of my first reactions is so as the farmer, like the little chicks running around, like there's a nice imbalance here. Not so much in like the gameplay, but just like I'm big, and I'm clearly like I've got like a bucket and there's these little chicks running around, and like it's a pretty clear connection that like my job is to like put them out. And the idea of like being surrounded by these little chicks that are on fire makes a certain amount of sense to me. And I do wonder as a farmer, like my goal it almost seems like it's one of those goals where it's like it's a lot of work, and it's almost anticlimactic in what I do. Like my goal is to like bring things down, is to like make things is I'm basically playing defense, right?
Yeah.
So I am in a role which isn't, I don't get to make things happen. I don't get to move the world forward. I'm the adult in the room saying, stop doing that. We want this to be as boring as possible. And we want to return normalcy to the space. And I guess I would wonder, like, is there a way to give the farmer that role sort of more excitement and more of an interest curve? One of my first thoughts was what if you went crazy and you did sort of barn versus barn?
That's cool.
And you legitimately made it a defensive role. But you were like had a way to like sort of help my team, something like that. And basically gave me something to root for.
Was the other chicks on fire at the other person's barn?
What?
Where when you're saying helping your team, you mean like there's like your like team A is the farmer from one barn, and the chicks from like that team are on the other barn trying to burn down farmer B's barn.
Yeah, and so like my job is to defend my barn, but I also have like a lighter, and like when my chicks sort of like come back, I can set them on fire and they like go burn the other barn down. And so like giving me an end goal to build towards and sort of be part of that experience, as opposed to just being like the opposing factor. Because right now the farmer feels sort of like feels like it would be almost like an AI controlled boss,
Sure.
Right? Like it's the opposite. It is the embodiment of the barn, and the barn is like pushing back against being set on fire. And it's sort of reacting that way, but it's an obstacle to what the real motivation of the world is, which is to burn things down. And like the idea of burning things down is exciting. Like, I mean, I think part of it is just coming from like, if I knew that there was a chance to be this agent of chaos and like run around and burn things down, like that might be more appealing to me. And that's why I asked, like, are you thinking one of you would be the farmer? You would take on sort of the work of being the obstacle, and you don't have to worry too much about it being a great interest curve. You can actually help like engineer an exciting interest curve for the chicks. And so I think that would be something I would look at.
That's interesting.
Obviously there's an aspect of this escalating. When you imagine, like you say you want to get to like 20 or so guests in this, what are they doing? Because you guys have hay, like in a sort of a fantasy space. What do you want the chicks doing? Like in terms of like strategy, like I am a single guest controlling a chick. Am I just like looking around for clearly places where there isn't fire? Is there a build to this where it's like, once we get this, then that opens up this, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the way that we were envisioning this, at least partially, was that an individual, like that we were not going to be in the Zoom room as the farmer, or the farmer wasn't able to hear what the chicks were conspiring about, and that the chicks would have some line of communication as to like how they wanted to distract or divert the farmer. Because really, like, you don't need, we have multiple locations for the hay. You don't need to have all of the chicks, you know, moving as a total unit. It would probably help if they did like make cohorts that sort of pulled attention away from the center. And I think we sort of anticipated that the guests would like want to be crazy, and like as an individual, they'd see something not on fire and be like, I'm gonna burn that. I'm gonna burn that. And like whether that's another chick, or we're hoping to make it very satisfying when something does burn from you. So we're trying to like reward the player for making things catch on fire. But beyond that, I don't think that we have like a super clear image of exactly like person to person what it looks like.
So one thing to consider then is like the idea of progress and state. Like how burned down is the barn? And I might push you a little bit, like patches of hay, but can you sort of make the barn in some sense be a progress meter? And the way you would do that, for instance, would be like if you're just working with hay, is I can clearly see that there are 20 bales of hay around here and 10 of them are burned to a crisp. And so I want to get those last 10. Or that bale of hay is half burned and I want to go back to that and get it back on fire. And I think the idea of as on the team fire, I can look around and see what objectives we're working on and like what that progress means within that context. And it doesn't mean that the world is saying, okay, team, your job is to burn this bale of hay, but I should be able to see, our success and where we have yet to go. And I think that clarity will be necessary for the team to like strategize on some level. And like, what does it mean to sort of like wage a fight? And then within that, you might be able to think about moments and progress. Like it's okay, like there are supports, right? And to get to the hayloft, you need to burn the supports and then they tumble down. And now there's like a big pile of hay we have to take on. And I think you would probably want to play with the idea of fire, which is fire can spread. But if things are isolated, they can't spread. So like there's like the pile of hay in the middle, you have to like get to it to set on fire. But that oil lamp over there, if you knock it down, like it can lead and like do that stuff. And so the idea, I think the other thing would be like, what is strategy? And it would be things along those lines of possibly like multi-stage things, or we do this and then we can do that. Or if we achieve that, and like those are consequences for that. And so being able to like anticipate that if we did this, then this would happen would be a big part of like thinking about the strategy and things like that. And that might be on the other side, what the farmer needs to be able to think about as well. Like I need to protect this because if they break this barrier, if they get through this, then we've got a whole world of pain to work through here. Or on the other side, is there, are there escalations for water and things that can be unlocked there? But I think that question would also then tie into, is the farmer designed to be a guest role and designed to have like this level of strategy and interest curve that has its own path? Or is it more just is it one of you guys and you're there sort of like managing the experience and being sort of an obstacle to give all of the guests a good experience? And that would be a thing to look for.
So, and then, so would you say then that like when we build out those interactions and like, is there a good way to test? We don't have 20 people on hand that often. Do you have any advice for like how we could gauge how that's doing like with fewer people, or is that we have to get 20 to test this? And
this is an eternal challenge when you push into game design that it requires circumstances that are unusual. Some of this is just hoping and trusting that your work will scale. But I would push for playtests that you can sort of like set as milestones and talk to the TAs. I think especially talk to the CloudWorks team. We're gonna try to help teams find ways to playtest. But one of the realities you're gonna face is those playtests will be small in number and you'll need to figure out how to get the most out of them.
Yeah, that's partially why I'm asking, because I know if we do get 20 people, it's going to be like a one-time shot and we're only going to get one go or something.
Yeah, and this is just sort of a lesson in playtesting. Playtesting is a broad spectrum, and there's playtesting like as an individual just thinking about things and like mentally walking through stuff. There's playtesting as a team with like simple role-playing and paper prototypes where you're like sort of like hashing out ideas and like trying to bring them to life a little bit. There's playtesting as a team with an actual prototype, and then there's playtesting with external people, and then there's like scaling it up. All those different things. I think you guys within as a class have a lot of people, and like getting like 10 people together like isn't going to happen like instantly on demand, but there's a decent chance that there's times where that could happen. And then maybe you can get a scheduled 20-person to happen, things like that. And then there are differences between a 4-person test and a 10-person test. And then there's a difference between a 10-person test and a 20-person test. Yeah, it will be a little bit challenging. And you'll have to probably leap into this without all of your unknowns truly resolved.
Got it. Okay.
The one other thing to look at, I appreciate the humor of where you're going with this. I'm on the fence of like, does this carry the world in the right direction? And part of it is part of it is like, how much do you want the sort of the pun, a little bit of the misdirection to like define your world? And I think the part of it is, do you want this world to be listed and read without visuals ever? Because I think the pun and the visuals work well. Like the idea of a little, almost like, I mean, you got these little pyromaniac chicks. And there's like definitely like a humor in their side. Like there's a nice humor that's played out, which is innocent looking creatures who are small, doing nefarious things, which is like sort of a major thing I get from this, which I think works well. But that clicks with the visuals. And obviously, like if your world, I think when your world is just listed by its name, it doesn't exactly send the right message. And I think there's a little bit of like, a little too clever and a little too proud of like the name that might be going on here. And so I would consider that carefully. I don't think you're necessarily in a place where it's inappropriate, but I think you might not be serving your world as well as you want to be. Because I think you need the complete visual to make that make sense. That said, like I said, I think think about it a little bit, and like, it's particularly like, how do you want people talking about your world? And yes,
we can talk about our world, but we think that there's a good way to make them talk about our world, probably. But yeah, I hear what you mean.
Yeah, and I guess the know that this will play differently across different audiences at the festival. And the idea of saying, hey, did you go play the hot chicks world? Will definitely cause, like, I think some pause and some conversation. Know if that's, in all circumstances, the pause and the conversation you want to have happen.
Sure.
So I think that is a thing you might want to consider. And is there something that sort of matches the subversive nature of this? Like I said, when I look at this, it is like the innocent nature of these little chicks being on fire and trying to like set the world ablaze. that this gets at, that has the same sort of like catchiness and sort of unexpectedness to it, but doesn't play upon, you know, sort of like sexualized stereotypes. So I would look at that a little bit too.
You got it.
But yeah, little chickens setting barns on fire. Push on it, and I think if you can think about how you want that to build, and I think especially like an audience watching this, and like what is that drama? Like what are those moments? This can go for a really, really good space.
Cool. Thank you.
Good work.
Thanks.
All right. Last team of the Pittsburgh morning session, Team 42.
Hello.
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 So, interim build. You guys are looking for 4 guests?
Yep.
Yeah, yep.
Anything special about running this?
I guess we should probably give you some instructions. We haven't implemented any instructions yet. Yeah, so you have a grid and you just need to click where you want to go. There's a timer at the top of the screen, and every few seconds, everyone jumps simultaneously.
Okay.
And then,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say one thing too. You can only jump one tile, or 1 or 2.
Okay.
2 tiles.
Yeah.
And it's highlighted. The range is highlighted.
Yeah.
And then there's icons on the tiles that do different things when you step on them. The different colored icons do different things. And the goal is to push the other team off the map.
Okay.
Yeah.
Teams, 1 jump, timer, click.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
So basically, you're just going to be clicking where you want to go a lot.
Start.
You'll like redirect to like another square depending on how you jump. Yeah, I think the host, so whoever's blue needs to click restart. Yeah.
Try that again.
We have a sort of a bug with the restart where the icons don't show up. But yeah, I just played a few more times to see what the icons do and stuff. have no icons, you'll have like different behavior. Yeah. You can, Steph, you can press space to just force restart the world, and there's a chance that it'll work next time.
All right, go ahead and stop share. So we can sort of talk a little about that, like the space and like the turn based, like immediately made me like think sort of strategy and like try to plan out my moves. So just like the setup feels pretty good about just knowing, like being able to look at stuff and be like, okay, this is the context. It was helpful that you told us that knocking the other team off was like the goal. Because I think that's definitely a little hard to get a sense of, is like, what are we trying to do here? And the pacing actually felt like, I never saw the timer for the countdown, but just like the idea of, there's this like, you wait a little bit and then the move happens. Actually felt pretty good. Like it felt like it was running at a reasonable pace, and I wasn't like impatient or things like that. But I also didn't feel overly rushed. I did feel like I didn't have a lot of ability to predict stuff. Like the most notable example is the collisions. Like I think every time a collision happened, I was surprised by what happened. And it was like, because it seemed like a double bounce came out in a direction I wasn't able to predict, and it caused people to fall off in ways that didn't feel like it was, that I was in control of it. Like I didn't, in fact, I don't think I ever felt like I successfully caused someone to fall off the board through my own planning and actions.
So I definitely feel like the guest experience will be like, the game's pretty quick, so we're gonna want them to hit restart a lot. We might even make like a single game unit to be like 3 rounds, like best of 3, so that they learn through trial and error how the world works. So it's intentional that you get thrown off by how the mechanics work, but they are consistent.
Yeah, and I guess this is the thing to look at is what is strategy, and what are sort of the guests like learning and aspiring to? And I mean, like, basically you're in a great place to iterate this now. Like you have what it feels like a full loop of gameplay. You have multiple power-ups. You got like sort of like a little bit of the interface. Like there's little things that like, I don't know who my teammate is very well. Like, but like that's a pretty easy thing to like put in, is like better clarity of who's on my team and things like that. The big thing to iterate though is like that idea of strategy of what do you want guests to learn, and like how does that build and turn into like an interesting competition? And right now there are some moments that I started to put into place. Like I'm just like thinking about like where is this going, and where is it starting to feel like picking out another person on the team and being like, okay, I need to get close enough to that person to like think about knocking them off. Like the sort of the first order thought in my head of like identifying the other guests and like recognizing like who's on my team, who's not on my team, and then thinking about, okay, like I just need to get close enough, because you've got a distance is like a really clearly defined thing here. Like when I step on those icons, you sort of like visualize something happening, and like I know I need to get sort of like in range. So there's a little bit of like strategizing around that. There's a little bit of like, what do those icons do? And I think that's one thing to learn is, if you jump on this icon, this thing will happen. And so that loop that feels like this is getting to is like sort of picking a target and then planning a strategy, which results in something. And that something looks like I'm also then looking at the icons like, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to try to jump on that icon and wait for the guest to be in range. The thing that's right now sort of fighting against that is like, what level of agency do I have in that whole process? Like I can move, but the other guest sort of being in range at the right time is fairly uncontrollable for me. And I think that would be the thing I would wonder about is like, what is that strategy that I'm executing on? And right now, the idea of jumping onto an icon on the board, I'm not too sure. Gives me enough control over my own like execution of strategy to be something that I can start to use and use well. I think that would be the thing I would watch for in this is like you're describing, like the idea of like the guest learning how to play the experience is part of this. But then once they get to a strategy place, like what does interesting strategy look like? And the nice thing about that is you guys as a team can sort of test that. Like you guys don't need to learn. Like you guys as a team know how this works and you can try it out. And so if you can sort of tune this to interesting strategy within your own team, then that can point you in a good direction for like, where do you want the guest to learn and build to? And I think to that end, like, have you guys played this and like, are you guys discovering strategy even within this early prototype?
Yeah, I don't know about everyone else, but I think that, yeah, we've had, Claire's particularly good. We all get beaten. Yeah, I don't know. Some other team members could, I don't know, explain what they saw
some of
in
the
our
strategy
playtest.
that you guys are already seeing.
Well, on my end, I know like, so the first thing is collisions. So when you try to go into the same square, if it's only two people, neither of you will go on there. And then you get reflected off of each other, which turns out to mean that they go where you were gonna go. Like they go in the direction you were going and you go in the direction they were going. But you go one square further so that you could knock someone into a hole. For example, you jump towards a hole, someone else tries to come in from the side, they get knocked into the hole because the hole is further away. So you might be predicting, like you're both next to an icon, you're like, if I jump onto this icon, I might be expecting to not get the icon, but to land next to it. And then you need to plan out, based on where you would fall, how does it still result in, killing the other player, basically. You can also if people choose not to jump, you can just knock them one unit by just jumping on them. You can, yeah.
Well, and so being able to talk through those strategies, like, is a really good starting point, because then you can say, oh, how will the guests learn that? And I'll admit, like, in the 2 rounds we played, I had no idea how collisions worked. And it's not the case that there's no way to learn it or it's too complicated. It's just a matter of, like, how do you get the guests to understand, like, they see a collision and then this happens. It's like, oh, that's what happens in a collision.
Yeah, I think maybe the visuals need to be more suggestive of what's happening, like, geometrically. It'd be a bit of a coding challenge, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the work here is your goal is to get the guests to understand these things and then use them, right? And so what you described is kind of complicated. It's when I jump into a space, the other character will get bumped in the direction I was going, but a double distance.
Yeah, or to the next square over.
Yeah, and that's a little bit complicated. But potentially, if I know that, if I understand that, then I can use that. And that's the basics of this world in terms of the strategy, is these pieces of, like, if I do this, then this happens.
I mean, just to be clear, I tried to pick what seems to match intuitively what, like, would happen physics-wise, but in a simplified. It's not like arbitrary or anything.
Yeah, and looking at your world, like, one of the things that's fighting against you is it's turn-based. It's like scheduled time-based. So and I'm clicking, so I'm not moving. So I actually don't have a strong intuition for my character's moving this direction. I selected that square. And this would change dramatically if this were a continuous, like, I am moving my character on the map and I can sort of, like, I have an intuition of, like, movement and direction, and then bumping makes sense. But your world has a a timed, like we all jump in and then we all jump out. We all jump here. And so it's much more of a, we go in and then something gets resolved. So my brain was like thinking the collision got resolved, not I moved in this direction. And
like,
I think that's part of what you're going to fight against is your world, the feedback is on a, on a beat, right? Every, 5 seconds, something happens. And so for me as a guest to get that, my brain is in I do this thing and then this thing happens. And it's a very different pattern than a continuous, I'm moving around the board and I push spacebar and like a punching glove pops out and like all that stuff. So like you've got a place where teaching the guests is a little bit weird. It's not super weird, but it requires extra understanding of guests. And this is where you might, when you iterate, you might really need to like watch guests. You might need to play test this and sort of like see how people are understanding this. A thing to consider is, moving this a bit, giving guests more time to learn. So you have a relatively fast pace. You could do stuff where you get multiple lives. So you get a chance to fail multiple times in a single round. And that would just give you opportunities to learn more. Because you said like you want guests to learn through failure. Right now, like the idea of like being knocked out means you just watch and wait. But from another perspective, you might also want learning to happen by watching too. And so like that could be another thing you reflect on is like as spectators, I'm watching and I can start to understand strategy and how the game works just by watching. And so like that ties into that whole idea of like how do guests learn? And it's, I think, especially for spectators, if you can get to a place where spectators understand what's going on, that will help a lot. Because it'll make the world just more exciting to watch. Like there can be moments of anticipation. It's like, oh, like you see this happening. And that might be the question is like, is there a special spectator view? Where like for instance, a thing that might be different in spectator view is I can see everyone's choices before they get executed. So as soon as someone clicks in the world, or even like in my spectator view, I can see the mouse cursor of everyone and it's highlighting their squares. And I can see, the red player, like their cursor moving around, and I can see that they clicked here, and it's like that's red destination. I can see yellow, and they clicked here, and that might be an extra layer that guests get, so they can like in that really quick moment, like they can anticipate the collision that's about to happen, and sort of get excited about stuff happening, and that might help teach strategy too. It's like there's more opportunity to watch and think and consider what's going on. As a spectator. But I mean, fundamentally, you're in a place where it's working and you can iterate it. I really, the idea of like reducing the arena as like, it's a solid game design concept. And I think it's when it happened in the world, I was like, oh yeah, like this world is like escalating. And that felt really good. So I think like a lot of this stuff is in a great place. So it's really just the identifying and clarifying the strategy and then getting the guests to learn it and understand it and then iterating it and sort of like enhancing those moments and all that stuff. So yeah, I think this is going in a great direction.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Good work. And I think with that, that's the last team of the morning. Good work, everyone. This is really exciting. Just the idea of like worlds that go beyond like go to like multiple guests and how this will tie into festival, and just the idea of thinking about like a match happening and guests watching and like the chatter around that, the excitement around that, like all this stuff is like, this feels like it's going to build to a really novel but really exciting festival. So good work on having stuff, and especially great work on first interim, like having a lot of stuff already working and thoughts put into it. I think everyone here is setting themselves up really well for success on this round. like the idea of like being able to iterate, making sure the tech works, all those little pieces. And like if we look at it, like there's interim 2 is next week, and then after that is final. So in the context of BVW, you have a lot of time. In context for like real world development, 2 weeks is not much, but you guys are really well positioned to make some cool stuff. So iterate, find ways to play test. I think the balance between team expertise and external naive guess is going to be something that becomes more and more important. The nice thing is that we have different strategies for teaching guests. So spectators watching, instruction sheets, little things like that are possible. So as you're building, think about just how do you get those guests into the experience and teach them. But everything here is like looking great. So great work for first interim in round 5. I guess before we sign off, anything TAs that we need to want to mention? Any TA business?
We are still missing 4 people on the t-shirt voting. So I just sent in a link into chat if everyone can check if you have voted yet, because we are running tight on the voting. That's
all right.
it.
Every vote matters.
Yes.
So the if you haven't voted in t-shirts, get that vote in. What? Before 1 o'clock?
Yes, please, so that we can announce the winner.
All right.
Yeah, oh, I saw one more vote, and we're missing 3. And it's still tight.
All right. So hopefully we'll have some stuff to announce about t-shirt this afternoon. It may be an announcement about a runoff. We'll see.
It's interesting. Yes.
All right. Well, great work this morning, and we'll see the next 3 teams this afternoon. All right. Let everyone.
See you.